What if something as simple as using your left hand could make an entire medieval village whisper behind your back tonight? We step into candlelit churches, muddy market squares, and cold monastery halls to uncover why left-handed people were once surrounded by suspicion, superstition, and fear. So get comfortable, let the world slow down, and if you enjoy quiet history told for sleep, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's begin. Hey guys, tonight you find yourself inside a medieval walled town at the edge of winter, just as the last light is draining out of the sky and the world turns the colour of old pewter. Cold stone presses its damp breath from the gatehouse walls. Straw lies dark and sour underfoot. Smoke gathers in the rafters of nearby cottages. Bells shiver from a church tower beyond the market square, and every bootstep lifts a soft kiss of mud. Horses steam in the lane. Torches gutter in the wind. And river mist creeps between the houses like it has paid rent here longer than anyone else. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You pull your cloak closer, though the wool smells of rain, smoke, and someone else's sheep, and you understand at once that you probably would not last a week out here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the town gate groans shut behind you, tell us where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand a moment beneath the arch of the gate, letting the town take shape around you in the slow, smoky dusk. The gateward, bundled in a fur-lined hood that has seen better winters and probably better owners, lowers the iron-studded bar across the oak doors with a tired grunt. A dog noses at your hem, decides you're not edible, and trots along beside you anyway, as though appointed by the town council to supervise strangers with damp boots. Beyond the gate, the lane slopes down toward the market square, where the day's business has folded itself into shadows. A fishmonger throws old rushes from his stall. A woman gathers turnips into a wicker basket. A boy sweeps straw and onion skins from beneath a trestle, using his left hand until his mother clicks her tongue and taps his knuckles with 2 fingers. Other hand, she murmurs, not loudly, but sharply enough that you hear it through the clatter of buckets and closing shutters. The boy changes hands at once. He does not argue. His eyes flick toward the church tower, rising black against the violet sky. You notice it then, the way small things gather meaning here. The right hand takes the coin, the right hand lifts the cap, the right hand touches the brow when the bell tolls. The left hangs at the side, hidden in a sleeve, useful but not praised, like a servant who knows too much. No one can quite agree whether the fear begins in sermons, old village sayings, ancient habits, or simply in the discomfort people feel when someone does a familiar thing the opposite way. Yet as you walk deeper into the town, past timber houses leaning over the lane, you feel how strongly the old customs hold. A cart with a broken wheel waits near a watering trough, tilted like a tired animal. Its driver kneels beside it, muttering at the axle with both hands blackened by grease. A priest passes him, thin-faced, cloak drawn close, a lantern swinging from one hand. The driver starts to cross himself quickly, but in his hurry his left hand rises first. The priest pauses. It is only a heartbeat. Less than a heartbeat. Perhaps. A small hesitation in the stream of evening, but the driver sees it. You see it. Even the dog seems to see it, though the dog's theology is probably limited to bones, warmth, and suspicious sausages. The driver lowers his left hand and makes the sign properly with his right. The priest gives a nod. neither cruel nor kind, and continues toward the church. The lantern light slides over puddles, over hoofprints, over scraps of straw pressed flat into the mud. The bells toll again, slow and hollow, calling the town toward prayer, supper, and the guarded dark. You follow because there is nowhere warmer, and because all roads in this town seem to bend toward the church whether they wish to or not. The parish church sits at the square's far side, shouldering its way above the low roofs, its walls pale where the last light touches them, and black where damp has gathered near the ground. A carved saint watches from above the door, one stone hand lifted in blessing, the other broken off at the wrist. Some swear the missing hand was struck by lightning. Others say a drunk mason broke it years ago and invented the lightning afterward, which is a very medieval solution to embarrassment. Inside the porch, people scrape mud from their shoes, wool cloaks drip quietly. A widow with a basket of coarse bread tucks a pilgrim badge beneath her collar, as if the little stamped tin saint might keep winter sickness away. An old man whispers that the left side of the body belongs too easily to mischance left foot first from bed, leftward turn at a crossroads, left ear ringing in the morning, even now. It is hard to tell whether he truly believes it, or only enjoys having something gloomy to say before supper. You pass beneath the low arch and enter the nave. The air changes at once. It is colder than you hoped, but stiller, thick with beeswax, damp wool, old rushes, and the faint mineral smell of stone. Candles burn in small trembling clusters. Their light catches on painted saints along the wall, on a rude screen dark with age, on iron keys hanging from the belt of a churchwarden who watches everyone with the solemn patience of a man who suspects half the parish of stealing candle ends. The floor is strewn with rushes, not as fresh as anyone might like. Beneath them lie older rushes, and beneath those, perhaps the memory of every wet boot that has crossed this nave since your great-grandmother's great-grandmother was still being told not to touch the good knife. People gather in loose groups, murmuring. Some kneel. Some stand because their knees have already given enough service to God, landlords, and winter. Children are drawn close by their mothers. Men keep caps pressed to their chests. The dog slips in behind you and sits near a pillar, apparently also devout. Near the font, the same boy from the market reaches toward the holy water. His left hand rises by habit, quick as a bird. His mother catches his wrist before his fingers touch the surface. She does not shame him aloud. She only guides the other hand forward, the right hand, the acceptable hand, the hand that belongs to blessing, oath, table, altar, and open daylight. You feel the small sadness of it. Not a great cruelty, not yet. Just correction repeated so often it becomes weather. A tap, a whisper, a glance, a lesson folded into the body until the body learns to hesitate. The priest appears near the chancel, his face lit from below by candles. His voice is low, worn smooth by repetition, and the Latin prayers move through the nave like water under ice. You do not catch every word, but you catch the rhythm. The townspeople know when to bow, when to kneel, when to cross themselves. Their gestures rise and fall together, right hands moving in the candlelight like pale birds. One woman, old and bent, crosses herself slowly with her left because her right arm is stiff from age or injury. No one corrects her. Instead, they look away with a kind of careful mercy. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether medieval churches truly feared left-handed people as much as later stories claim, or whether the fear grew from many smaller roots, the Latin word for left tangled with ill omen, the old habit of putting honour on the right side, the practical mess of ink and tools made for right-handed hands, the sermon's love of order, the village's suspicion of difference, but standing there in the dim nave, with wet wool steaming faintly and bells fading into the rafters, you understand how a fear can live without needing a single law to house it. It lives in the mother's fingers closing around her child's wrist. It lives in the priest's pause beside the cart. It lives in the old man's mutter at the porch, in the right hand lifted to bless, in the left hand tucked away beneath a cloak. Outside, the last colour leaves the sky. Inside, a half-burned candle gutters near the font, bending left in a draught no one can feel. You watch its flame lean and recover, as the prayers continue in their low and sleepy tide. The prayers move on, soft and steady, and you remain near the pillar because the nave is crowded and because the dog has chosen your boot as a pillow, which is a kind of parish obligation now. The rushes beneath your feet whisper whenever anyone shifts. They are sweetened here and there with old herbs, rosemary and meadowsweet perhaps, though the scent is fighting a brave and losing battle against damp wool, candle smoke, and the long memory of muddy shoes. Above you, soot-black rafters vanish into shadow. Below you, this stone gives back the cold through the soles of your boots, patient as a tax collector and almost as beloved. The priest's voice lowers, then rises, and the people answer in murmurs that seem to come from their chests rather than their mouths. You watch their hands because, after the warning at the gate, after the boy in the market, after the cart driver's quick correction, you cannot stop watching. Right hands lift to brow and breast. Right hands touch the shoulder in the proper order. Right hands hold rosaries worn smooth by years of thumb and prayer. The left hands stay quieter, tucked into sleeves, pressed under elbows, hidden beneath cloaks, or held around children who are too restless for holiness and too cold for patience. Near the font, a woman dips 2 fingers into the holy water and marks her baby's forehead. The baby blinks, offended but not surprised, having already learned that the world is mostly cold drops, wool scratches, and adults leaning too close. The woman's right hand makes the sign carefully, almost beautifully. Behind her, a younger man does the same with a glance sideways, as though afraid someone might judge not his soul but his technique. In this place, even blessing has manners. Some swear that holy water loses none of its power if touched with the left hand, while others mutter that a blessing should never begin from the side of ill luck. No one says this loudly in the nave. Loudness belongs to markets, geese, and men explaining cart wheels. Here, suspicion travels in glances. A girl reaches of the font with her left, then freezes before anyone corrects her. She looks toward her grandmother, who gives the smallest shake of the head. The girl changes hands and presses wet fingers to her brow, her face solemn with the effort of doing the ordinary thing correctly. You feel how tiring it must be to live under such watchfulness. Not chains, not fire, not a great dramatic punishment, the sort minstrels enjoy because it gives them something to rhyme with doom. Just the daily burden of being noticed, the wrong hand rising at the wrong moment, the wrong turn around a shrine, the wrong side chosen at a doorway. It is a small fear, but small fears are like mice in a granary. Given time, they eat more than anyone expects. A churchwarden moves along the side aisle, trimming a candle wick with tiny iron shears. The smell of hot beeswax thickens. You see wax pooled like pale honey near the base of a saint's image, where pins, scraps of thread, and a bent little coin have been left by those asking favours. A woman with red knuckles ties a ribbon near the painted foot of Saint Blais, perhaps for a sore throat, perhaps for a child's cough, Perhaps because she has tried broth, herbs, and advice from neighbours and now prefers a saint who does not interrupt. Her right hand ties the knot, her left hand holds the ribbon steady, doing half the work and receiving none of the honour. The priest turns, and the people bow. You bow because everyone else bows, and in the Middle Ages this is often the safest theology. A merchant near you smells faintly of cloves and wet leather. His purse hangs heavy, guarded by one elbow and the sharp attention of his wife. She watches not the altar but their apprentice, a pale youth with ink on his cuff, who keeps rubbing his left thumb against his palm. Perhaps he writes with that hand. Perhaps he was born reaching that way. Perhaps he only has a splinter. In a town like this, even a splinter can look suspicious if it chooses the wrong side. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the church itself teaches fear first, or whether the village brings its old fears into the church and hears them echoed back in grander words. You see signs of both. The painted Last Judgment above the chancel places the blessed on the right hand of heaven, bright and orderly, while the condemned tumble leftward in faded reds and smoky browns. The image is old, cracked near one angel's wing, but everyone has stood beneath it since childhood. A child who cannot yet read Latin can still read that wall. Right is safety, left is shadow, right is welcome, left is where things go wrong. And yet the church is not only fear. That is what makes the place harder to understand and easier to believe. An old woman with the stiff right arm comes forward, the one you saw earlier, and the priest gives her no rebuke. He lets her left hand rest on the rail. He even adjusts the candle beside her so she can see her way. Mercy moves quietly here, quieter than doctrine, quieter than gossip. You notice it in the way a neighbour steadies her elbow, in the way no one laughs when her fingers tremble. Medieval life is often harsh. Yes, but it is not made only of harshness. It is also made of people helping one another stand on cold stone without making a song about it. At last, blessed bread is brought forward in a shallow wooden bowl, small pieces cut from a coarse loaf. It is not feast bread, not the soft white kind lords tear apart without thinking, but dark and dense, with a crust like a sermon on endurance. The churchwarden carries it along the nave. Each person takes a piece with the right hand, murmurs thanks, and steps aside. You watch the pattern repeat: reach, receive, bow, move, reach, receive, bow, move. The rhythm becomes almost hypnotic. Then the bowl reaches the ink-stained apprentice. His left hand rises first. It is such a little movement, the sort of movement no one would notice if the world were kinder, warmer, less crowded with meanings. But here, beneath painted saints and a leaning candle flame, the movement becomes enormous. His mistress inhales. The churchwarden pauses. The apprentice's ears redden. For one suspended breath, the knave seems to listen. Then the boy changes hands. He takes the bread with his right. The churchwarden moves on. Nothing happens, and somehow everything has happened. You stand with your own piece of coarse bread in your palm, feeling its rough edge against your skin. The dog wakes, hopes briefly for a miracle involving crumbs, and sighs when none arrives. Around you, the townspeople settle again, but the air keeps the memory of that small mistake. The half-burned candle by the font leans once more in the hidden draught, and you begin to understand that fear in this town does not always roar. Sometimes it merely watches, waits, and corrects the hand before it can touch the holy water. When the last murmurs of prayer thin into silence, the people begin to leave the nave in slow, shuffling streams, each cloak brushing another, each boot finding the same old muddy places in the rushes. The cold follows them out through the porch, but the candle smoke remains, hanging in blue-grey layers beneath the rafters. You linger near the pillar while the dog noses hopefully at the floor, where no saint, living or painted, has provided the crumb it feels it deserves. The half-burned candle by the font gutters once steadies and throws a wavering light across the stone bowl, where the holy water trembles from all those careful right-handed touches. A monk stands near the side door watching the people go. You noticed him during the prayers, though he tried very hard not to be noticed, which in a crowded church is often the surest path to being noticed. He is narrow-shouldered, wrapped in a dark wool habit, with ink stains deep in the grooves of his fingers and a face made pale by too many hours indoors beside too little fire. His eyes follow the apprentice, the one whose left hand rose for the bread. Not cruelly, exactly. More as a man watches a candle flame lean too near a curtain. When the apprentice vanishes into the porch, the monk turns and catches you looking. For a moment, neither of you speaks. Then he lifts his lantern. "You are not from here," he says. It is not a question, but in medieval towns, being damp, confused, and accompanied by a self-appointed dog is usually enough identification. You nod. He studies you a little longer, then gestures toward the side passage. If you seek shelter, the guest bench by the scriptorium is warmer than the nave. Warmer is a generous word, the kind of word used by people who have made peace with disappointment. Still, you follow him because the wind is worrying at the church door and because curiosity, like damp, finds its way through every seam. The dog follows too, claws clicking softly on stone. The monk does not object, though he gives the animal the look of someone who has copied enough psalms to know that all earthly creatures are God's work, and some of them shed more than others. The passage behind the church is low and narrow. You duck beneath a beam blackened by age and soot. The lantern throws gold along the walls, catching on iron hinges, a hanging bunch of dried herbs, and a wooden peg where a spare cloak droops like a tired ghost. Somewhere beyond the wall, rain begins again, faint at first, then steadier, tapping on lead and thatch. The monastery bells, farther off than the parish bell, mark the hour with a slow, disciplined voice. Time here belongs less to clocks than to metal, prayer, hunger, and darkness. The scriptorium is a small chamber built against the church's north side, where the air smells of scraped vellum, oak gall ink, tallow, and cold ashes. A brazier glows faintly in the corner, giving more comfort to the idea of heat than to heat itself. 2 desks stand beneath narrow windows shuttered against the night. Quills lie in a horn cup. A pumice stone, a penknife, a ruler, and a little pot of red pigment sit arranged with almost holy precision. On one desk rests an unfinished page, its letters marching in dark ranks across pale skin, each line ruled straight, each capital touched with red and blue. The monk sets down the lantern and bends over the page. His right hand reaches for the quill. Then he stops. You see why? His left hand has moved first, almost without permission, and now hovers above the desk. He closes it slowly into a fist and tucks it into his sleeve. No one can quite agree whether shame makes a room colder, or whether cold rooms simply give shame better lodging, but you feel the temperature shift all the same. You write with the left. You say softly, though you do not mean it as accusation. The monk's mouth tightens. I was born troublesome. It is a dry answer, and not entirely bitter. He sits on the bench, takes the quill with his right hand, and tries to copy a line from the psalm before him. The letters appear stiff, hesitant, crowded too closely together. Ink thickens at the nib. His wrist strains at an awkward angle. After a few words, the line wavers. He stops, breathes out, and lays the quill down as carefully as if it might confess against him. With the other hand, he murmurs, "I can write twice as fast and sin only in the margins." You almost smile. The dog sighs beneath the desk, having discovered that scholarship is not edible. He shows you an older sheet, hidden beneath a board. The writing there is smaller, smoother, more alive. The letters lean slightly but gracefully, like reeds in a mild wind. Yet across the lower edge, a dark smear runs where his hand must have dragged through wet ink. In a world of slow-drying ink and right-handed desks, the left hand is not merely suspicious, it is inconvenient. It smudges. It crosses the fresh words. It makes a mess of holy order and medieval people. Already surrounded by mud sickness, bad harvests, and taxes, have very little patience for unnecessary mess. Brother Anselm says the smears prove the hand's nature. The monk tells you that it cannot pass over good words without troubling them. Do you believe him? He looks toward the shuttered window, where rain taps like tiny knuckles. Some days I believe ink is wet. That may be the most sensible theology you hear all night. He speaks then in a low voice, not quite gossip and not quite confession. He tells you that when he was a child, his mother tied a strip of wool around his left wrist during meals so he would remember not to reach for bread with it. A village priest once told him the right hand was made for blessing and the left for lesser tasks, though no one could agree whether those lesser tasks included carrying buckets, holding reins, or scratching one's nose during Lent. At the abbey, one brother swore that left-handed boys were more likely to be tempted by mischief. Another said the matter was nonsense, but still moved the inkwell to the monk's right side every morning. Those who tell the tale never fully agree where caution ends and cruelty begins. Here in the little scriptorium the boundary looks as thin as a ruled line on vellum. The monk trims the quill with his penknife. The blade flashes in the lantern light. He uses his right hand for the knife too, slowly, carefully, though the left fingers twitch as if remembering skill. He tells you of saints painted with right hands raised, kings shown enthroned with favoured men on the right, sinners placed to the left in wall paintings, and old women who throw spilled salt over the left shoulder to blind whatever ill thing waits there. He does not laugh at the old women. In winter, with children coughing and grain bins low, people use whatever defences they can afford. A gust presses rain against the shutters. The lantern flame leans left, as the candle by the font did, then rises straight again. The monk notices. So do you, for a moment. The little room feels full of signs, or of people trained too well to search for them. At last, he draws the hidden page toward him. With a small, almost defiant calm, he takes the quill in his left hand. His shoulders loosen. The first letter blooms dark and sure. Then another, then another. The ink still shines wetly behind his moving fingers, and he must lift his wrist high to avoid smearing it, a posture both awkward and elegant. He writes like someone walking a narrow bridge in darkness, and yet the words come clean. You sit quietly, warming your hands near the faint brazier, listening to rain, bells, quill scratches, and the soft breathing of the dog beneath the table. Outside, the town sleeps under smoke and wet thatch. Inside, a left hand copies holy words by lantern light. Feared by some, corrected by many, but still moving steadily across the page. By morning, the rain has worn itself thin, and the town wakes under a low grey sky that seems to have been scrubbed with ashes. You leave the scriptorium when the first bell trembles through the damp air, carrying with you the memory of the monk's left hand moving across vellum as quietly as a secret. The little brazier has nearly died. The lantern has burned low. Brother Anselm, or perhaps some other brother with the same gift for suspicion, has begun coughing in a nearby passage. So your ink-stained companion hides the smoother page beneath its board again and reaches for the stiff, right-handed copy as if putting on an uncomfortable shoe. Outside, the churchyard grass is wet enough to soak your hem within 3 steps. Crows hop along the stone wall, judging the living with the confidence of creatures who eat almost anything. The dog trots beside you, refreshed by sleep and spiritually unchanged. At the porch, the half-burned candle near the font still smokes faintly, a black thread rising from its bent wick. Someone has set a fresh candle beside it, as though replacing a tired guard. The market square, so shadowed and folded the night before, is now stretching itself awake. Stalls rise plank by plank, canvas awnings sag with rainwater. A baker sets coarse loaves on a board, their crusts split and dark, while his apprentice shakes flour from a sack and sneezes into his sleeve with the resignation of a person who's been made of flour since birth. A fishwife arranges smoked eels in neat rows. A peddler lays out pilgrim badges, pewter spoons, bone combs, little charms against fever, and a string of beads said to have touched a saint's shrine, though even now it is hard to tell whether the saint was involved or merely nearby in someone's imagination. You move slowly among them, keeping your cloak close. The mud has thickened overnight and now grips at boots with the gentle persistence of an unpaid debt. Chickens peck near a cabbage cart. A woman pours ale from a jug into wooden cups for men who insist it is medicinal, because dawn is a fragile condition and should not be faced unfortified. Somewhere, a smith's hammer begins striking iron, slow and regular, answering the bells with a more practical kind of prayer. Here, hands are everywhere. Hands weigh onions, hands test wool, hands count coins, tuck purses, slap fish onto boards, lift lids from baskets, and gesture sharply during arguments about market tolls. You watch them because you have learned to watch. The right hand gives payment. The right hand seals bargains. The right hand is extended in greeting when a man wishes to look honest, which is often exactly when he should be watched most carefully. The left hand steadies, carries, hides, and helps. It grips the basket handle while the right hand chooses apples. It holds the child while the right hand pays for bread. It scratches at fleas, wipes noses, and catches falling things. It labours constantly and is trusted rarely. At a spice stall, a merchant in a russet hood sells pepper by the pinch, guarding it as though each black grain has its own lawyer. His assistant, a quick-handed young woman with sleeves rolled to the elbow, measures mustard seed into a little twist of cloth. Her left hand moves with natural skill, tying the knot before the merchant notices. He clears his throat. The proper hand, Eleanor. She pauses, then reties the knot with her right, slower and clumsier. A few seeds spill onto the board. The merchant sighs as if civilization itself has leaked out with them. Some swear that knots tied with the left hand can bind luck the wrong way, especially in matters of marriage, sailing, and childbirth. Others say this is nonsense unless the knot fails, in which case everyone suddenly becomes an expert. The young woman says nothing. Her face is calm, but you see her jaw tighten. When the merchant turns away, she sweeps the fallen seeds into her palm with her left hand and drops them into a jar without wasting one. Near the baker, An old beggar sits beneath the jutting upper story of a timber house. His beard is yellowed with age, his cloak patched in 3 shades of brown, and his wooden bowl rests between his knees. When passers-by drop coins, they do so with the right hand, careful and visible, but the beggar blesses them with his left, 2 fingers raised crookedly. A woman gasps softly and pulls her daughter aside. The beggar grins, showing a heroic absence of teeth. "Blessing still lands," he mutters. No one can quite agree whether the old man is holy, harmless, or simply too stubborn to be corrected. Perhaps all 3 are common in saints, beggars, and elderly relatives. A passing carter tosses him a heel of bread anyway, making sure to use his right hand, then touches the little wooden cross at his neck just in case generosity requires insurance. You pass a stall selling ribbons, needles, horn buttons, and scraps of dyed wool. A mother chooses a length of blue thread while her son stands beside her, chewing the edge of his sleeve. He reaches leftward toward a painted toy horse, and before his fingers close around it, the stall-holder gently slides it away. "Ask with your good hand," she says, not unkindly. The boy switches hands. The toy is returned. The lesson is complete before anyone calls it a lesson. You think of the monk's childhood wrist bound with wool. You think of the apprentice in the nave, ears red beneath candlelight. You think of how many times a body must be corrected before correction becomes instinct. The market gives no sermons, and yet it preaches constantly. Every exchange carries an order right for oath, right for trade, right for blessing, right for the clean bread and the shared cup, left for shadows, for wiping, for hidden work, for tasks polite mouths prefer not to name. And still, the left hand survives everywhere. A wool merchant uses his left thumb to test the thickness of cloth while praising its quality with his right hand raised. A butcher steadies a hanging goose with his left while his right displays the knife. A girl braiding onions works left-handed until her aunt looks up, then changes without complaint, then changes back when the aunt looks down. The town may fear the left hand, but it also depends upon it. That is perhaps the quiet comedy of the whole arrangement. The hand accused of disorder is forever helping keep the world from falling off the table. A sudden commotion rises near the toll post. The cart you saw last night, the one with the broken wheel, has been dragged into the square. Its driver argues with the toll keeper over whether a cart that cannot properly roll should pay the full fee for entering the market. The toll keeper, wrapped in a cloak trimmed with damp fur, insists that the gate was opened, the town road used, and therefore the coin is owed. The driver lifts his left hand in protest. Grease still dark in the lines of his palm. The toll keeper's eyes narrow. For a moment, you think the dispute will become about money, as most disputes do when people are honest. But then a woman near the fish stall whispers that the wheel broke because the driver crossed himself wrong the night before. Another says he turned left around the roadside shrine beyond the bridge. A third says the wheel was old, which is less thrilling and therefore receives less attention. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether misfortune creates superstition, or superstition simply waits beside misfortune with a ready explanation. The broken wheel sits in the mud, innocent of theology. The driver lowers his left hand and raises his right instead. The toll keeper accepts the gesture as if it has improved the argument, though it has not repaired the wheel. You buy a small piece of coarse bread with a coin warmed in your palm. You remember to pay with your right hand. The baker nods, and you feel a faint unease at how easily you obey. The dog receives a crumb at last and looks briefly convinced that the market, the church, and perhaps all creation have been arranged for this moment. The bell rings again from the parish tower. Morning spreads fully over the square, thin and silver, stalls brighten, voices rise, smoke curls from cook fires where pottage thickens in iron pots. Yet under all the ordinary bustle, beneath bread and wool and tolls and gossip, the hidden rule moves like a thread through cloth. Watch the hand, correct the hand, trust the right, doubt the left. And as you stand among baskets, beads, wet straw, and steaming horse breath, you understand that the church does not need to speak every fear aloud. The town has learned to carry some of them into market by itself. The bell's sound carries over the market roofs and out toward the manor yard, where the town's louder bargains soften into a colder, sterner kind of waiting. You follow the flow of people because everyone seems to know where the morning is going, and in a medieval town, drifting with the crowd is often safer than pretending you understand the schedule. The dog follows too, trotting with the pleased confidence of a creature who has eaten one crumb and now considers itself a legal witness. The manor hall stands beyond the square, not grand like a castle, but solid enough to remind everyone who owns the fields, the mill, the dovecote, and possibly the weather if the steward can find a way to charge for it. Its walls are timber and plaster, its roof steep and dark with rain, and its yard is churned into mud by carts, pigs, and boots. A line of villagers waits beneath the eaves tenants with rent questions, a widow with a boundary complaint, two brothers arguing over a strip of pasture, and a man holding a goose as evidence, though the goose looks unwilling to testify. Inside, the hall smells of smoke, wet wool, rushes, old ale, and the faint sourness of many anxious people standing too close together. A fire burns at one end, but its warmth stops well before reaching the benches, as though even heat understands rank. The reeve sits near a trestle table with a wax tablet, a tally stick, and a face made for saying no. Beside him stands the parish priest from last night, hands folded inside his sleeves. The steward, wearing a fur-trimmed cap that has clearly improved his opinion of himself, listens while a clerk scratches notes with a quill. You settle near the side wall, where bundles of dried rushes lean beside an oak chest banded in iron. The half-burned candle from the church is not here, of course, yet you find yourself thinking of it, its flame bending left in the hidden draught. The monk's ink-stained fingers return to your mind, the apprentice's red ears, the boy in the market changing hands before touching the toy horse. These little moments gather like frost. Then a woman steps forward with the child. The child is perhaps 9 or 10, small but sturdy, wrapped in a brown wool tunic patched at the elbow. His hair has been cut unevenly, probably with shears meant for sheep, which is one of those medieval economies no child deserves. His mother holds his shoulder, not tightly, but firmly enough that he knows not to fidget. He keeps his left hand tucked behind his back. A murmur passes through the hall. The reeve looks at the mother, speak. She bows her head. My son is said to trouble the school bench and the church rail. The priest's expression remains mild, but tired. He reaches with the left, for bread, for blessing, for the stylus. He has been corrected. The boy looks down at the floor rushes. No one can quite agree whether he's afraid, ashamed, bored, or merely staring at a beetle, because children are deep mysteries and often hungry ones. But his hidden hand curls and uncurls behind him, and you understand that everyone in the hall has come to speak about a hand as though it were a wandering goat that must be returned to its pen. A neighbour steps forward, an older woman with a chin sharp enough to cut cheese. She says the boy dropped a milk pail last week after lifting it first with his left. Another man adds that he threw a stone left-handed and struck a shrine post beside the lane. The boy whispers that he was aiming at a crow, which does not improve matters, though the dog lifts its head with interest. Crows, after all, are suspicious in most legal systems invented by dogs. Some swear that a child who favours the left hand should be trained early, before the habit grows roots. Others say that tying the left wrist with red thread can coax the right hand into strength, especially if done before sunrise on a saint's day. Someone in the back mutters that a charm of rowan wood works better. The priest frowns at that, because churchmen rarely enjoy competing remedies, particularly from trees. The mother hears it all with her mouth pressed shut. Her hands are rough from washing, kneading, hauling water, and winter work that does not pause for village opinion. When the reeve asks whether she has corrected the boy, she nods. With cord, she says softly, and with reminder, with prayer, and still asks the steward, and still he forgets when he is tired. The boy's face tightens, not with rebellion, but with the old exhaustion of trying to be watched into a different shape. You feel the hall shift, not much. Medieval mercy does not always arrive with trumpets. Sometimes it comes as one woman lowering her eyes, one man clearing his throat, one priest remembering that he too was once clumsy with the spoon. The clerk pauses with his quill above the wax. The fire snaps. Smoke climbs toward the rafters and finds the holes it knows best. The priest steps closer to the child. Show your hands. The mother stiffens, but the boy obeys. His left hand comes forward first, then the right, both small, both chapped, both reddened by cold. There is no mark of devilry there, no shadow, no secret sign, just dirt beneath the nails and a little cut near the thumb. A working child's hands, a living child's hands. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the priest intends rebuke or kindness in that moment. His face gives little away. He turns the boy's right palm upward, then the left. He studies them as though reading a manuscript written in skin. The right must be taught, he says at last. The hall accepts this. It is the answer it expects. Then he adds, quieter, but not as one beats wickedness from a door. A crooked twig may be tied gently. It is not a revolution. It is not even a full mercy. It is a small loosening of a rope. Yet the mother's shoulders drop as if she has been carrying a sack of barley since dawn. The reeve scratches the ruling into his tablet. The boy is to practice at table, at church, at school. The mother is to answer for him if he disrupts prayer. No neighbour is to lay hands on him without her leave. This last part causes several faces to sour, which tells you it was needed. The steward declares the matter settled, with the grave satisfaction of a man who has successfully governed a child's fingers. The next dispute begins almost at once. Something about a boundary hedge and a pig with bold opinions. The hall breathes again. People shuffle. Someone coughs. The goose under one man's arm produces a sound that suggests contempt for human law. As the mother leads her son away, the boy glances back toward the priest, then toward you, though you are no one here. For one heartbeat, he lifts his left hand in a tiny, uncertain farewell. His mother sees it. She does not strike it down. She only folds her own hand around his, hiding it inside her cloak as they pass into the yard. Outside, the mud waits, the market hums, and the church tower rises over the roofs. The fear has not vanished. It has only softened around one child, for one morning, in one smoky hall, where the rushes smell of damp straw and old judgment. Sometimes, in this world, that is as much warmth as the fire can spare. The mother and child disappear into the grey morning, and the manor yard folds back into its ordinary troubles rent, hedges, geese, pigs. and the eternal mystery of why every village boundary seems to pass through exactly the patch of earth two men want most. You step away from the hall while the steward's voice drones behind you, carrying judgment into the rafters like smoke. Outside, the town feels wider after the press of bodies. Rain has returned in a fine, needling mist, soft enough not to sound impressive, persistent enough to soak everything that has ever trusted a cloak. You cross the market square slowly. The stalls are still busy, though the awnings sag and drip. The baker's board is half empty. The spice merchant guards his jars. The old beggar raises two crooked fingers in blessing as you pass, and this time you cannot tell whether he uses his left hand from habit, pain, mockery, or holiness. No one can quite agree whether such gestures protect the giver, the receiver, or only the story people tell afterward. At the far edge of town, the road bends toward the south gate and the pilgrim way beyond it. The gateward lifts the bar just enough for a small company to pass two wool merchants leading pack horses, a woman with a bundle of candles wrapped in linen, a broad-shouldered carter still muttering about the broken wheel now lashed to the back of his cart, and a thin pilgrim wearing 3 badges on his hat. One badge shows a shell, one shows a little saint with a raised right hand. The third is so bent and worn that it might be a bishop, a fish, or a very ambitious turnip. You join them because the road is safer in company, and because the church bell behind you sounds as though it is pushing everyone onward. The dog trots at your side, delighted by mud, which is proof that every creature has its own theology. Beyond the wall, the world opens into fields under rain. Stubble lies dark with wet, hedges drip, a few cattle stand near a ditch, looking offended by existence. The pilgrim road is not a grand path so much as a long argument between feet and earth. Each step makes a soft sucking sound, and your boots collect more country than seems fair. The wool merchants pull their hoods low. The candle woman keeps one hand over her bundle. Beeswax is costly, and rain has no respect for sacred inventory. At the first crossroad stands a shrine beneath a twisted hawthorn. It is no larger than a cupboard, roofed with warped shingles, holding a painted wooden Virgin and Child behind a little iron grill. Ribbons hang from the branches, red for fever, blue for safe childbirth, green perhaps for cattle, or love, or because someone had green ribbon and a problem. A few pilgrim badges have been nailed into the wood. Someone has left coarse bread, a cracked cup, and a sprig of rue tied with thread. The company slows. Even the pack horses seem to understand that places like this require behaviour. The pilgrim removes his hat and bows. The candle woman crosses herself with her right hand, careful and neat. The carter hesitates, glances at his left hand, then wipes it on his tunic and uses the right. Some swear that if you pass a roadside shrine on the left without greeting it, the road ahead grows longer by a mile. Others say the shrine must be approached from the right side, unless you seek protection from thieves, wolves, or a mother-in-law with legal opinions, in which case the leftward path confuses evil. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, which is convenient, because the road itself forks in a way that makes every choice look mildly guilty. The pilgrim touches the shrine grill with his right fingertips, then secretly pats the hawthorn trunk with his left. You see it because you're standing close, and because by now you notice such things. He catches your eye and gives a sheepish shrug. "Saint for the soul," he murmurs, "tree for the road." It is difficult to argue with a man who doubles his protections before walking through rain. The candle woman kneels in the mud, not happily, but with determination. She takes a little tin badge from her pouch and presses it into the damp earth beneath the shrine. Then she whispers a prayer for her sister's child, who has a twisted foot. She uses her right hand to make the holy sign, but with her left she smooths mud over the badge, hiding it from passing eyes. Danger and protection meet there in the same pair of hands, one public, one secret, one acceptable, one useful. The priest from town would perhaps frown at the mud-hidden offering. Brother Anselm would likely write a note about it in a tone cold enough to preserve fish. Yet out here, beyond the church wall, people do what fear teaches them and what hope allows. A charm tied under a bed, a bit of iron over a door, a prayer to St. Apollonia for teeth, a thread measured around a sick child's wrist and burned before dawn. The world is full of aches, and official remedies are not always nearby, affordable, or successful. So the road grows thick with little bargains. You move on, leaving the shrine behind, but not entirely. The ribbons tremble in the rain at your back. The pilgrim hums under his breath. The carter complains that if shrines truly protected wheels, his cart would be rolling like a king's carriage. The wool merchants ignore him with the practised calm of men who have heard every road complaint since Lent. Mud clings higher on your boots, rain beads on your cloak. Somewhere in the hedge, a bird gives a sharp cry and falls silent. The road turns left around a stand of alder trees. Everyone notices. It is almost comical, except no one laughs. The carter stops first. The pilgrim glances at the sky. One merchant says the leftward bend is only where the old Roman road sank into marsh. The other says he once knew a man who took a left road near Michaelmas and lost 2 sheep, 1 shoe, and his temper. This seems less like evidence than weather with witnesses, but the group considers it solemnly. No one can quite agree whether leftward roads are unlucky because they lead away from the favoured hand of blessing, or whether people simply distrust any path that vanishes into trees. In the rain, with the town bells fading behind you and the hedges closing in, either reason feels persuasive enough. The pilgrim solves the problem by stepping first with his right foot while turning left. This satisfies everyone, or at least gives them something else to do with their anxiety. You copy him, feeling faintly ridiculous and faintly relieved. Medieval caution often works like that half-belief, half-habit, and half not wanting to be the only fool who skipped the charm. Yes, that is 3 halves. Accounting was also less cheerful before ledgers improved. Beyond the alder bend, the road narrows. A little stream runs beside it, swollen by rain, carrying leaves, straw, and a small wooden spoon that spins away like a drowned boat. The dog investigates the water and returns with muddy paws and the expression of a scholar who has confirmed a theory. The candle woman shares a strip of coarse bread with you beneath an ash tree while the horses rest. It tastes of rye, smoke, and damp cloth, but hunger makes a kind seasoning. The pilgrim shows you his badges, each bought at a shrine, each proof of miles walked and prayers paid. He says one badge protects the right side of the body, one guards the left, and one is mostly for show, because people trust a travelled man more when his hat jingles. As afternoon dims early beneath the rain, you pass another shrine, then a stone cross leaning beside the way. At its base lies a little pile of offerings, bent pins, hazelnuts, a strip of linen, and a child's left mitten. The mitten is soaked, palm upward, as if waiting for a hand that has gone on ahead. You think of the boy from the manor court, his left hand hidden in his mother's cloak. You think of the monk writing holy words in secret. You think of how the left side frightens people, yet also becomes the place where they hide petitions too tender for open daylight. The rain softens. The road darkens. Far ahead, beyond low fields and black hedges. A small lamp glows at a wayside building where travellers may find ale, fire, and news that has grown more dramatic with every mile. You walk toward it with wet wool heavy on your shoulders, while behind you the roadside shrine keeps its ribbons trembling in the dusk, guarding both the right hand people praise and the left hand they fear. The lamp ahead grows larger through the damp blue of evening, until it becomes a square of yellow light trembling behind the horn panes. The building crouches beside the road where the hedges break, half alehouse, half guest shelter, and entirely devoted to the ancient art of smelling like smoke, wet boots, onions, and horse. Its roof sags beneath old thatch. A wooden sign hangs from an iron hook, painted with a white hand holding a cup, though the paint has weathered so badly that the hand might also be a turnip, a cloud, or a ghost surrendering to drink. No one can quite agree whether the place is called the White Hand, the Saint's Cup, or simply that warm room before the marsh, which is perhaps the most honest name. You duck through the low door behind the pilgrim and the candle woman. Warmth meets you at once, rough and smoky. More an argument against cold than a complete victory. The room is long and dark-beamed, with rushes scattered over the floor and benches drawn near a central hearth. Soot climbs the rafters in black feathers. A pot of pottage hangs from an iron chain, bubbling slowly with barley, leeks, beans, and whatever small bones have given their final service to supper. Coarse bread sits on a board beside a crock of butter so hard from the cold that spreading it requires faith, patience, and possibly a mason's chisel. The dog enters as if expected and lies down by the hearth with scandalous confidence. Several people glance at it, decide it belongs to someone else, and return to their cups. You sit near the fire, feeling steam rise from your cloak. Around you gather the road's tired company, the two wool merchants, the carter with the resentful wheel, the pilgrim with the jangling hat, the candle woman guarding her beeswax bundle, and three locals already settled on the bench as though born there and unlikely to be moved without tools. The alewife, broad-armed and red-cheeked from the hearth, serves ale in wooden cups and gives everyone the look of a woman who has heard all sins, all excuses and all claims that payment will come after market day. Compline bells sound somewhere far off, perhaps from a small chapel beyond the fields, perhaps from memory. The room lowers itself into that hour when road weariness loosens tongues. People eat from trenchers and wipe their fingers on cloths already defeated by use. The pottage is thick, smoky, and welcome. You tear bread with your right hand, because by now the habit has settled into you like cold into stone. The left hand rests near your bowl, quiet and undeserving of all the trouble people give it. The carter drinks first, then announces that his broken wheel is no ordinary wheel but the victim of ill fortune brought on by a left-handed blessing from the beggar at the town market. The wool merchant in the indigo hood snorts. Your wheel broke because it was older than the abbot's mule. That mule still walks, says the carter. Not happily, says the other merchant. This produces a soft ripple of laughter, the kind that does not disturb the fire. The carter persists. He swears that after the beggar raised his left hand, the axle groaned like a sinner at confession. One local, a narrow man with a beard trimmed into 2 damp points, says his aunt once accepted a left-handed blessing and found all her hens laying soft-shelled eggs by Candlemas. Another says hens do that when badly fed. The narrow man waves this away. Practical explanations are useful for repairing roofs, but they are poor fuel for alehouse tales. Some swear that luck enters by the right hand and leaks out through the left if a person is careless. Others say the left hand can steal misfortune away if used secretly at the proper hour. The alewife, pouring another cup, says both views are nonsense unless they help customers pay, in which case she is willing to consider them. The pilgrim leans forward, badges chiming faintly. He tells of a shrine near the coast where sailors tie knots left-handed to bind storms. They tie them with the right hand for fair wind, left hand for turning danger aside, and with both hands when they have no idea what the sky is doing, which at sea is most of the time. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the knots work, but the pilgrim insists the sailors believe enough to pay for blessed cord. The candlewoman listens with interest. She says her grandmother taught that a wart rubbed with the left hand under a waning moon will shrink away, provided the person then buries a bean behind the bier and does not look back. A local woman corrects her, not a bean, a pea, not behind the bier under the threshold, and if you look back, the wart returns with friends. This begins a gentle dispute over folk cures, all of them oddly specific, none of them supported by the dog. Who sleeps through medicine with the wisdom of the innocent? You think of the healer's world waiting somewhere beyond this room, full of rue, leeches, charms, and muttered words. You think, too, of the church's caution. The priest tolerates some old customs, frowns at others, and perhaps fears most the ones that happen in secret left hand under cloak. Charm under bed, knot tied at dawn, thread burned in silence. The left hand becomes not only unlucky but private. It does what people are ashamed to admit they need. The alehouse talk turns from luck to oaths. The wool merchant in russet says no bargain is sound unless sealed with the right hand, palm clear, fingers visible. A left-handed clasp, he says, is used by cheats, debt runners, and men selling wet wool as dry. His companion objects that wet wool is usually obvious because it weighs as much as a sleeping cow. Still, everyone agrees that the right hand belongs to public trust. It swears, pays, blesses, greets. It enters the daylight and says, "See, I hide nothing." And the left asks the pilgrim. The carter lifts his cup with his left hand, then notices and quickly changes. The left keeps the knife. The room quiets. Not in fear exactly, but in recognition. Every belt here carries a small blade for bread, cord, meat, leather, and 100 daily tasks. The left hand may steady the loaf while the right cuts. Or, in darker stories, the left distracts while the right steals, or the right swears while the left betrays. Medieval people do not need grand villains for suspicion. A purse string cut in a crowd is enough. The alewife sets down the jug with a thump. Hands do what hearts tell them. It is the plainest sentence of the night, and perhaps the most dangerous because it leaves less room to blame fingers. For a while, everyone eats quietly. Rain ticks on the thatch. The hearth settles, sending sparks up the chimney. Your cloak grows warmer and heavier. The dog dreams, one paw twitching toward some private field where all crumbs are large and no priests inspect technique. The candlewoman shares a little beeswax taper with the alewife in exchange for a place near the fire to sleep. The carter rubs his palms and mutters that if hearts command hands, his heart would like his wheel repaired by morning. The pilgrim, softened by ale and road fatigue, tells one final tale. In a village beyond the marsh, he says, there lived a left-handed bell ringer who could ring the passing bell so sweetly that the dying heard it as a lullaby. The priest disliked his manner. The villagers mistrusted his hand. But when fever came through the houses, they sent for him all the same. He rang with both hands, right and left together, until the sound crossed the fields and settled over the roofs like wool. Some swear the fever lessened. Others say winter ended, which often improves health by being less winter. Even now, it's hard to tell whether the bell ringer saved anyone, but the tale survives because people like to fear what they need and need what they fear. The room grows drowsy after that, cups empty, voices sink, someone adds wood to the fire and the smoke rolls low before climbing. You lie back against a folded cloak near the hearth, with damp boots stretched toward the warmth and the sound of rain soft on the roof. In the corner, the carter finally sleeps, one hand open on his chest, the other hidden beneath his blanket. The pilgrim's badges glimmer faintly in the firelight. The alewife banks the coals. As you drift close to sleep, you remember the town church, the rushes beneath the nave, the monk's smudged ink, the child's hidden farewell, and the shrine ribbons trembling in rain. The left hand follows you through each memory, sometimes feared, sometimes corrected, sometimes useful, sometimes kind. Outside, the road lies black and wet beneath the night, waiting to take you onward when the bells begin again. Before dawn, the alehouse stirs in pieces. First the fire shifts, sighing under its grey blanket of ash. Then the dog wakes, stretches, and steps on your ankle with the solemn confidence of a noble crossing his own land. The pilgrim mutters into his cloak. The carter coughs. Somewhere near the door, a hen objects to the existence of morning. You open your eyes to low rafters, dim coals, and the smell of smoke pressed into every thread of wool you own. Rain has stopped, though the world outside still drips. The alewife moves through the room with a rushlight, nudging sleepers toward wakefulness in the gentle manner of someone who needs the floor cleared before breakfast. You eat a heel of coarse bread dipped in thin ale, which is less a meal than a negotiation with hunger, but it warms the mouth. The candlewoman gathers her beeswax bundle. The wool merchants tighten their packs. The pilgrim shakes his hat, making his badges chime softly in the grey light. Word comes from a drover at the door that the parish church in town will display a relic before noon, a little bone of a saint said to cure trembling hands, crooked fingers, and pains of the wrist. The drover heard it from a boy who heard it from the sacristan's niece, which in medieval terms is practically a printed announcement. No one can quite agree whether the relic is from St. Luke, St. Bartholomew, or a local holy man whose name has been rubbed off the label. But the promise is enough. The carter says his hands ache from the broken wheel. The candlewoman says her sister's child might need blessing. The pilgrim says all relics are worth seeing if the queue is not too long. You say nothing, but you think of the left-handed monk and the boy in the manor hall, and the road back toward town begins to feel less like a choice than a thread you are already following. So you return with the morning company along the muddy way, past the leaning stone cross, past the roadside shrine where ribbons hang heavy with rain. The child's left mitten still lies at the base, darker now, soaked through, its little thumb curled inward. The pilgrim touches his hat. The candlewoman crosses herself with her right hand, then with her left presses something small beneath the hawthorn roots. You do not ask what. Some prayers are meant to remain muddy. By the time you reach the town gate, the market is already awake again, thinner than before but still loud enough to make the crows complain. The broken cartwheel has been repaired with a fresh peg and a great deal of advice from men who did not do the work. The gateward lets you through, rubbing his eyes and pretending not to recognize the dog, who clearly considers himself a returning citizen. The church porch is crowded. Word of the relic has spread like spilled ale. Men and women press beneath the arch, their breath steaming in the cold. A mother carries a child with a bandaged hand. A weaver flexes fingers bent from years at the loom. An old soldier holds his wrist against his chest. There are aches everywhere once people hear a saint may be listening. A table has been set near the nave, covered with a linen cloth, and beeswax candles burn around a small reliquary shaped like a hand. It is silvered in places, tarnished in others, with tiny coloured stones set around the wrist. The holy bone itself rests behind a little crystal window, pale and narrow, no larger than a splinter. Some swear that relics glow in the presence of true need. Others say they sweat, grow warm, ring faintly, or become heavier when false hearts approach. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, which is fortunate, because most relics seem to prefer modest behaviour. The priest stands beside the table, looking both solemn and tired, as if holiness would be easier if it required less crowd management. The churchwarden holds his iron keys and watches the candles. Brother Anselm stands near the chancel with his mouth folded into suspicion. And there, half hidden behind a pillar, is the ink-stained monk from the scriptorium. His left hand is tucked inside his sleeve. His right hand holds a small book. The line moves slowly. Each person approaches, kneels, touches the cloth or the reliquary with the right hand, murmurs a prayer, and steps away. The beeswax smell grows thick and golden. Light pools on the polished places of the reliquary, while shadows gather in the carved knuckles. The painted saints along the walls seem to lean closer. Underfoot, the rushes are fresher than before, sweet with strewn herbs, as though the church has dressed itself for company. A woman near you whispers that the saint especially favours right hands because his own right hand blessed a king. Another whispers that he once healed a mason's left thumb after the man swore never again to carve dice on a holy day. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the saint has opinions about dice, thumbs, or kings, but the whispers braid themselves into belief before your ears. Then the boy from the manor court enters with his mother. The knave notices him in little ways: a turned head, a paused breath, a quick glance toward his hands. His mother keeps her face forward. The boy's right hand hangs stiff at his side, ready to be good. His left is tucked beneath the edge of his cloak. They join the line. It creeps forward. A candle gutters. The priest blesses a weaver. The old soldier kisses the cloth. The mother and boy step closer. When their turn comes, the boy kneels. His mother bends beside him. The priest lowers the reliquary slightly so the child may touch it. Everyone expects the right hand. You expect it too, and the knowledge makes you uneasy. The boy lifts his right hand, but it trembles. Whether from cold, fear, habit, or all the watching eyes, no one can quite agree. His fingers hover above the silver hand and cannot settle. Then his left hand slips free. The mother reaches to stop him, but too late. His left fingertips touch the reliquary. A small sound passes through the nave, not quite a gasp, not quite a prayer. At that same instant, one of the beeswax candles beside the relic flares high. The flame leaps, bright and sudden, gilding the silver hand, lighting the boy's face, catching in the little crystal window over the bone. The church glows for one breath, as if the sun has entered through a crack in the roof. Then the flame settles back, small and ordinary. Silence follows. The boy keeps his fingers on the reliquary. His eyes are wide. The priest looks at the candle, then at the child. Brother Anselm's face tightens as though he has found a blot in a royal charter. The churchwarden leans toward the candle and mutters that the wick was too long. The old beggar from the market, somehow present near the porch, raises his crooked left fingers and smiles. Some swear that the saint accepted the child's left hand. Others will later say the candle flared because of a draught from the side door. A few will insist beeswax sometimes does such things when badly trimmed. One woman will claim she saw the crystal shine blue. Another will say no, green. The dog, seated under the table, sneezes and contributes nothing useful to the inquiry. The priest does not pull the boy away. That is what matters most. He places his own right hand gently over the child's left, not hiding it, not striking it, only holding it there against the silver. His lips move in blessing. The mother bows her head, and you see tears on her cheek, small and bright in the candlelight. The monk by the pillar watches without breathing. Slowly, almost secretly, he draws his left hand from his sleeve and rests it on the cover of his little book. The knave exhales. The line resumes, but the old pattern has changed, if only by the width of a candle flame. Fear remains in the walls, in the paintings, in the whispered corrections waiting outside. Yet for this moment, beneath beeswax light and smoky rafters, no one can say with certainty whether the left hand has brought danger, grace, accident, or simply a story the town will never stop retelling. The story of the candle flare does not stay inside the church for long. Stories rarely do. They slip through doorways faster than drafts, follow people beneath cloaks, settle into market stalls, and grow new details while no one is looking. By late afternoon, the silver hand has glowed blue, green, white, and gold, depending on which doorway you stand near. By supper, the saint has either forgiven the boy, warned the priest, rebuked Brother Anselm, or complained about the churchwarden's candle trimming. No one can quite agree whether a miracle has occurred, which is often how you know a town is enjoying itself. You spend the evening near the guest bench behind the church, where the left-handed monk says very little but copies more smoothly than before. He does not write openly with his left hand when others pass, yet he no longer hides it quite so fast. The boy and his mother do not return, but their absence seems to live in the room like warmth after a body has left a chair. The half-burned candle from the font has finally been removed, though you still remember its wavering flame, leaning left in the hidden draught. Before sunrise, you leave the town. The gate opens only a crack, just wide enough for a small party and a pack mule to pass through. Frost has come overnight. It silvers the cart ruts, stiffens the edges of puddles, and turns every straw on the ground into a tiny brittle blade. Your breath clouds before you. The dog appears from nowhere, as if summoned by the sound of leaving, and joins you with no explanation. With you are the pilgrim, the candle woman, one wool merchant in a patched indigo cloak, and a quiet charcoal burner who knows the forest track better than the road. He carries a billhook, a coil of rope, and a pouch of dried peas at his belt, because medieval travel prefers a person to be ready for hunger, brambles, and mild disaster all at once. The town falls behind quickly. Its walls become a dark ridge against the paling sky. The church tower stands above the roofs, one bell sounding prime with a slow, cold note. You listen until the sound thins into the fields. Ahead, the road narrows between hedges and then slips toward woodland, where bare branches lace together overhead and the frost lies thick on fallen leaves. The charcoal burner takes the lead. His name is Watt, and he speaks rarely, though when he does, everyone listens, because forests punish people who ignore quiet men with practical boots. He tells you to step where he steps and not to tug at every branch that catches your cloak. Some branches catch because they are branches, he says, some because they have opinions. The pilgrim makes the sign of the cross with his right hand. The candle woman adjusts her bundle. The wool merchant pretends he's not concerned, which fools no one, least of all the mule. The forest receives you slowly. At first it is only a gathering of trees near the fields, then a dimmer world of roots, moss, bracken, and old paths that seem to remember more feet than they reveal. The ground is uneven beneath the frost, and your boots slide where leaves hide mud. Rooks stir in the high branches, somewhere deeper in. Water moves under ice. The air smells of wet bark, cold earth, and last year's rot, clean and bitter all at once. Some swear that the left side of a forest path belongs to wandering spirits, especially before dawn, when night has not fully given up its claim. Others say this is only because the left side is where roots hide under leaves and twist the ankles of people too busy being superstitious to watch their feet. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. So Wat simply keeps to the centre when he can, and steps right around fallen branches when the choice is easy. The pilgrim asks whether it is true that a man who turns left 3 times in a wood will return to the place where he first lied. Wat considers this depends how much he lied. That ends the question for a while. You walk in a line, breath and footfall soft in the frozen hush. The candlewoman's beeswax bundle gives off a faint honeyed smell whenever the wind turns. The merchant's pack creaks. The dog ranges ahead, then returns, then ranges ahead again, apparently immune to dark omens so long as they do not involve missing breakfast. A hare bursts from the bracken and vanishes leftward between 2 ash trees. The pilgrim stops so abruptly that the mule bumps him. "Bad sign," whispers the merchant. "Breakfast sign," says Wat, though he does not chase it. The path begins to bend left around a low rise tangled with roots. Everyone notices, as they did near the Alder Road, but here beneath trees, before full light, the bend feels older. The trunks lean close. Mist hangs in strips between them. A small wooden cross has been nailed to an oak at the turning, weathered pale, with a scrap of red wool tied beneath it. Perhaps someone died there. Perhaps someone got lost there and later decided the tree deserved blame. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such markers warn, protect, or merely remind the living that others pass this way uneasily. The candlewoman pauses and touches the cross with her right fingers. Then, almost without thinking, she touches the red wool with her left. You see her notice herself doing it. She glances toward the pilgrim, but he only nods, as if the road has taught him not to judge any hand that asks for safety. What leads you left around the rise, but he takes the first step with his right foot. Everyone follows. It feels foolish and comforting, like many human customs. Frost cracks under your soles. The roots look like old knuckles gripping the earth. Your cloak catches on a thorn, and when you turn to free it, your left hand moves first. For a moment you hesitate. The old lessons of the town have entered you more quickly than you like. Then you pull the cloth loose anyway. Nothing happens. Unless you count the thorn keeping a little thread as toll. Dawn grows by degrees, not bright but pearly. The forest begins to show its small details, hazel catkins, deer tracks, a broken clay charm half buried in mud, a feather caught in ivy, the black mouth of a foxhole beneath a bank. Wat points out a cluster of rowan berries, shriveled but red. He says some people hang rowan over doors against witchcraft, while others carry a twig in the left pocket to confuse ill luck. Why the left pocket, asks the pilgrim. So ill luck looks in the wrong place, says Wat. This explanation satisfies everyone more than it should. You stop near a stream where the ice is thin at the edges and water murmurs beneath. The merchant shares dried fish wrapped in cloth. The candlewoman gives you a piece of bread. Wat eats peas from his pouch with the calm of a man who has accepted joy in small, hard forms. The dog receives a fish scrap and briefly becomes the happiest creature in Christendom. While you rest, the pilgrim tells of forest chapels where hunters leave antlers beside saints, and of old women who advise travellers never to sleep with the left side of the body facing an open wood. The merchant says he once slept with both sides facing a wood, because he was drunk and lost, and suffered no harm beyond marriage to his second wife the following spring. This is received as evidence for several different positions. Soon you rise and walk on. The forest track climbs, dips, and narrows. Mist thins. Light gathers on the upper branches. Behind you lie the church, the relic, the boy's left hand beneath the priest's blessing. Ahead waits the abbey road, though you cannot yet see it. Around you, the woodland keeps its old beliefs in roots and bends, in red wool scraps and right-footed turns, in warnings half-remembered and habits no one bothers to name. And through it all your own left hand swings at your side, cold, ordinary, and strangely brave. By mid-morning, the forest begins to loosen around you. The trees stand farther apart, the mist lifts from the bracken, and the track grows firmer beneath your boots, though still damp enough to remind you that comfort is a rumour told by dry people. Ahead, beyond a low field glazed with frost, the abbey appears in pieces first, the square bell tower, then the pale wall, then the dark roof lines of barns, chapel, guest house, bakehouse, and cloister, all gathered behind stone like a small town that has decided to speak only in whispers. The bell rings as you approach, not loud like the parish bell, but deep and measured, as if each note has been carefully weighed before being allowed into the air. The pilgrim bows his head. The candle woman tightens her grip on her beeswax bundle. But the charcoal burner stops at the edge of the field and points with his billhook toward the gate. "I leave you here," he says. "Monks dislike mud indoors." You look down at your boots, which are now more mud than boot. This seems like a theological difficulty. Or gives the dog a final scratch behind the ear, then turns back toward the trees. The dog watches him go, considers loyalty, food, and indoor warmth, and chooses the abbey without visible regret. At the gate, a lay brother admits you through a small door set inside the larger oak one. He wears a plain wool robe and carries a ring of iron keys at his belt. His face is calm in the disciplined way of men who rise before dawn, eat without complaint, and probably have opinions about crooked spoons. He glances at your party, at the pilgrim badges, the candle bundle, the merchant's pack, your wet cloak, and finally the dog. "No dogs in the guest house," he says. The dog sits. The lay brother looks at it. The dog looks back with the grave innocence of a saint in fur. No dogs near the hearth, the lay brother revises. So the matter is settled, as many medieval rules are settled absolutely, then less absolutely when reality enters. You pass into the outer court. The abbey smells of wood smoke, damp stone, yeast from the bakehouse, and hay from the stables. A boy hauls water from a well in 2 wooden buckets, walking carefully so the sloshing does not earn him a rebuke. Chickens scratch near a dung heap. A monk crosses the yard with his hands hidden in his sleeves, eyes lowered, sandals whispering over the hard ground. Another carries a basket of turnips toward the kitchen. Everything moves with purpose. Even the smoke seems to rise in obedience. The guest house stands along the wall, warmer than the road and colder than hope. Inside, rushes cover the floor in a fresh layer scented with lavender and rue. Wool blankets lie folded on narrow benches. A long table rests on trestles near the hearth, and beside the door sits a basin for washing. The lay brother points to it before anyone removes a cloak. "Hands first." You wash in water so cold it feels freshly borrowed from a cloud. The pilgrim washes right hand, then left. The candle woman does the same. The wool merchant, perhaps from habit, scrubs both as if he expects the abbot himself to inspect under his nails. You notice the lay brother watching the order, not fiercely, not with the sharp suspicion of Brother Anselm, but here. Small order matters. A hand washed carelessly, a sleeve left dripping. A knife laid with its blade facing the wrong way, each little disorder scratches against the abbey's larger piece. No one can quite agree whether monastic discipline makes men holy or merely very attentive to benches, bells, and breadcrumbs. In either case, the room is tidy. When the meal comes, you sit with other travellers at the guest table while a novice brings pottage in a wooden bowl and coarse bread on trenchers. There is smoked fish too, sharp with salt, and a little ale, thin but welcome. The monks eat elsewhere, beyond a passage, yet their silence reaches you. In the guest house, speeches are loud, but softly, as though loud voices might bruise the walls. Before eating, the lay brother makes the sign of the cross, slowly, with his right hand. Everyone follows, you do too, and again feel that faint unease at how quickly your body has learned the expected motion. The left hand waits at your side, the right hand blesses, reaches, breaks bread, takes the cup. The table seems arranged for it. Knives lie to the right. Cups are passed rightward. Bread is offered from right hand to right hand, each gesture modest, practiced, nearly invisible. The pilgrim, tired from the road, forgets and reaches leftward for the fish. The lay brother's eyes lift. The pilgrim freezes, then changes hands with a little cough, as if clearing his throat might also clear the offence. The wool merchant studies his bread with intense devotion. The candle woman hides a smile behind her cup. You suspect that if embarrassment could heat a room, the abbey guest house would be almost comfortable. Some swear that food taken with the left hand carries quarrels into the belly. Others say it is simply ill-mannered because the left hand is reserved for baser tasks, the sort everyone knows and no one wishes discussed during fish. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether such customs begin in cleanliness, scripture, Roman habit, village gossip, or the powerful human desire to make dinner complicated. After the meal, a bell calls the brothers to prayer. The lay brother permits travellers to stand at the back of the chapel if they wish. You go, drawn by warmth, sound, and curiosity. The chapel is narrow, its windows small, its stone walls washed pale. Beeswax candles burn before a painted crucifix. The monks stand in their stalls, hoods lowered, voices joining in chant that rises and falls like breath in sleep. Their hands are folded, hidden, controlled. When they bow together. When they turn together. No stray gesture escapes. At the edge of the choir, a young novice fumbles with his sleeve. His left hand slips out first as he reaches for the book. An older monk beside him gives the faintest tap against the wood. The novice withdraws it and uses the right. The chant does not break. The correction is so small it almost disappears, which somehow makes it stronger. You remember the child in the manor hall, the monk in the scriptorium, the relic beneath beeswax light. Here, the fear is quieter, dressed as discipline. It is not the market's gossip, nor the roadside shrine's tangled charms. It is order. The right hand belongs to the common motion, the shared table, the visible prayer. The left hand, awkward and private, must learn to fold itself away. Yet even here, mercy slips through. After the service, the old guest masters, whose own fingers are swollen with age, drops an iron key near the chapel door. It falls to his left side. Without thinking, he reaches down with his left hand and picks it up. No bell cracks, no candle flares, no saint falls from the wall. He simply tucks the key back onto his ring and smiles at you as though the world has survived worse. Evening settles early over the abbey. You're given a wool blanket and a place on a bench near the guest house wall. The dog, officially not near the hearth, sleeps close enough to enjoy it. Outside, the bell marks another hour. Inside, travellers grow quiet. Your hands rest beneath the blanket, right and left together, both cold, both tired, both innocent in the dark. By the time morning loosens the frost from the abbey yard, the bells have already divided the darkness into prayer, bread, silence, and work. You wake on the guest house bench with one cheek marked by the wool blanket and one shoulder stiff from discovering, once again, that medieval furniture has very firm opinions about softness. The dog is not near the hearth, according to the rule, though it has somehow arranged itself in the warmest possible place that is not technically the hearth, proving that some creatures understand law better than lawyers. The lay brother gives travellers a breakfast of coarse bread, small ale, and a spoonful of thickened beans. Steam lifts from the bowl. Outside, novices carry baskets toward the storehouse, and a kitchen boy shakes frost from a bundle of leeks. The candle woman prepares to remain at the abbey until noon, hoping one of the monks will bless her beeswax for her sister's child. The pilgrim wishes to visit a nearby holy well. The wool merchant talks of the road east, where cloth prices may be better, or worse, or exactly the same but with more mud. You mean to follow the pilgrim, but at the gate you hear talk of a healer in the village below the abbey hill, a woman who treats crooked fingers, shaking wrists, burns, coughs, swelling, toothache, and melancholy goats. No one can quite agree whether she is wise, troublesome, blessed, or merely old enough to have outlived her critics. The lay brother frowns when her name is mentioned. Use prayer first, he says. The wool merchant mutters, and if prayer does not pull a thorn? The lay brother says nothing, which is almost an answer. So you descend the lane toward the village, past bare orchards and a pond rimmed with ice. Smoke lifts from low roofs. A woman beats a rug against a fence. A boy carries kindling in a basket larger than his patience. Near a byre, a cow lows with deep complaint, perhaps theological, perhaps digestive. The healer's hut stands at the edge of the settlement where the last cottage gives way to wet meadow. Its walls are wattle and daub patched with clay, its roof shaggy with thatch, and from the door hangs a bundle of rue, rosemary, and something thorny enough to discourage both spirits and visitors. Inside, the room is dim, warm, and crowded with smells. Dried herbs hang from rafters in crackling bunches: sage, betony, yarrow, tansy, lavender, mugwort, and plants you cannot name. A small fire burns under an iron pot. Clay jars line a shelf beside horn spoons, linen strips, a bowl of salt, a charm written on parchment, and a glassy-eyed eel in a bucket, which turns out, after one alarming moment, to be a bundle of leeches. The healer sits near the hearth, grinding something green in a mortar. She is small, bent, and wrapped in a dark cloak pinned with a bone clasp. Her hair is covered, her eyes are sharp, and her hands are quick. The right is knotted with age, the left moves more freely. "So," she says, without looking up, "you have come to stare at the wicked hand. You nearly deny it. But honesty feels warmer in this room than politeness. I have come to learn why people fear it." She snorts. People fear what spills, limps, writes badly, heals strangely, or refuses to stand where it is put, sit. You sit on a low stool beside a basket of wool and a sleeping cat. The cat opens one eye, decides you're not medicinal, and returns to dreams. The healer works her pestle in slow circles. She tells you that the left hand has long been blamed for unlucky work, but also secretly trusted for certain cures. A wart may be rubbed with the left thumb at moonset. A fever charm may be tied with the left hand so the sickness becomes confused and wanders away. A child who stammers may be given water from a spoon held in the left hand, if the spoon has first rested overnight beneath a church step. Some swear that pain must be drawn out from the side opposite the heart. Others say pain is not so well educated. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether such remedies come from old pagan custom, village experiment, desperate love, or the simple fact that when nothing else helps, people become very open-minded. A woman enters carrying a little girl whose fingers are swollen from chilblains. The healer does not ask whether the child reached wrongly for bread or blessing. She warms the hands over steam, rubs them with goose fat and herbs, then wraps them in linen. Her left hand does most of the work, gentle and certain. The mother watches, anxious but grateful. When the healer murmurs a prayer to St. Agatha under her breath, the mother crosses herself with her right hand. When the healer ties the final knot left-handed, the mother pretends not to notice. There, the healer says, keep her from cold water, give her warm broth, no scolding the fingers. The mother nods as though this last instruction is the hardest. After they leave, the healer shows you a small charm scratched on parchment across, 3 holy names, and a line of letters that may be Latin, or may be the kind of Latin villagers invent when Latin is not watching. She folds it into a square and ties it with red thread. The priestess likes these, she says. Do they work? She looks at you over the mortar. Sometimes the charm works. Sometimes the rest works. Sometimes time works and lets the charm take credit. Time is generous that way. It is difficult not to like her. A man comes next with a swollen wrist from hauling sacks. The healer examines it, clicks her tongue, and sets 2 leeches against the skin. The man looks away with the bravery of someone who would rather fight a wolf than watch a worm dine on him. You also look away, because bedtime journeys need not become educational in every direction. The healer covers the place with a cloth and tells him to breathe. She uses her left hand to steady his arm. He notices. Will that spoil it? She gives him a flat look. Your wrist spoiled itself before my hand arrived. The dog, wisely, stays near the door. By afternoon, the hut grows golden with low light. The healer gives you a cup of warm ale steeped with herbs that taste like a meadow had an argument with the cupboard. Outside, the abbey bell rings faintly over the hill. Its ordered sound enters the room full of charms, leeches, smoke, and drying plants. For a moment, church and cottage seem less like enemies than 2 tired neighbours treating the same frightened world with different tools. You understand why the church mistrusts this place. Here, blessings blur with whispers. Saints share shelves with roots. The left hand ties knots the right hand would not admit to needing. Yet you also understand why villagers come. A child's pain, a mother's fear, a worker's swollen wrist, these do not wait politely for doctrine to finish speaking. When you step back into the cold, the healer stands in the doorway, her left hand resting on the lintel beneath the hanging rue. Remember, she says, a hand is only a hand until fear teaches it a story. The abbey bell rings again, soft through the damp air. You climb the hill slowly, carrying the smell of herbs in your cloak. while behind you the healer's hut settles into smoke and dusk at the edge of the meadow. You return to the abbey as the light thins over the hill, carrying the healer's words with you like the scent of rue caught in your cloak. A hand is only a hand until fear teaches it a story. The phrase follows you past the orchard, past the pond rimmed with grey ice, past the guest house door where the dog waits as though it has spent the day guarding the entire religious estate and would now like recognition, preferably in the form of fish. Inside, the abbey is restless in a quiet way. A messenger has come from the nearby keep, bringing word that travellers, merchants, and pilgrims sheltering at the abbey are invited to the Lord's Hall for an evening meal. Invited is perhaps too warm a word. Summoned would be nearer, though medieval hospitality often wears a smile while counting who owes whom a favour. The Lord is returning from a boundary ride, the steward says, and he wishes witnesses news and company at table. The pilgrim brightens at once. The wool merchant smooths his cloak. The candle woman decides to bring 2 small tapers as a gift. The lay brother gives everyone the look of a man who hopes secular food will not undo monastic discipline in one evening. So near dusk, you leave the abbey yard and walk toward the keep. The road climbs between dark hedges, and the first stars prick through the cold sky. Ahead, torchlight gathers along the walls. The keep is not vast, not one of those impossible stone giants from stories, but it is strong, square, and confident, with a gatehouse, a timber hall within the curtain wall, and guards who appear to believe mud itself should ask permission before entering. Your boots, by now, could apply for citizenship in several counties. The hall glows with firelight. You step inside beneath a carved lintel and feel heat roll over your face. Smoke coils beneath the rafters before escaping through a louver in the roof. Rushes cover the floor, fresher near the high table and less noble near the door. Shields hang along the walls, their painted beasts watching supper with open mouths. Servants hurry between trestles carrying trenchers, jugs of ale, wooden bowls, and platters of roasted turnips, smoked fish, beans, onions, and a few slices of meat thin enough to suggest the animal died of modest means. At the far end, the Lord sits beneath a faded hanging, fur collar spread around his shoulders, his wife beside him in a gown of deep green wool. The priest from the town is there too, having arrived by some road of obligation. You also see the steward from the manor court, the one with the fur-trimmed cap and a talent for governing fingers. Near the side wall, half in shadow, stands the left-handed monk, sent from the abbey with a small book and a face that says he would rather be copying psalms in a cold room than attending a warm feast, which is how you know he is sincere. You are placed at a lower table with the pilgrim, the candle woman, the wool merchant, and 2 household servants who eat quickly because work keeps tapping them on the shoulder. A trencher of coarse bread lies before you, slightly stale, meant to hold food and soak up juices. A knife rests to your right. Salt sits farther up the table, nearer the better-born guests. No one can quite agree whether a person's place at table reveals their soul, their purse, or merely how much the steward likes them, but everyone notices the distance from the salt. Before eating, the Lord's chaplain blesses the meal. Right hands rise, right hands cross brows and breasts, right hands return to laps. The order is as smooth as chant. Then the meal begins, and the hall becomes a study in manners disguised as hunger. You learn quickly that a feast is not simply eating. It is a map of rank, trust, cleanliness, and suspicion. Bread is broken with the right hand. Cups are passed rightward. A shared knife must be offered handle first, never point first, and certainly not from the left unless you want 3 old women to remember it until Candlemas. The salt should not be spilled, and if it is, someone will mutter about throwing a pinch over the left shoulder, though whether's to blind the devil, distract bad luck, or simply make a mess behind you. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. A servant boy brings a platter of fish. He's quick and careful, but the platter is heavy, and his right wrist is wrapped in linen. Without thinking, he steadies the edge with his left hand and offers it to the steward. The steward pauses. The boy reddens. The hall does not stop. Exactly. But the nearest guests grow attentive. The priest glances over. The lord's wife sees, and you notice her eyes soften. The boy tries to shift the weight to his right hand, but the fish slides dangerously on its source, and for one terrible breath, supper itself threatens to become a theological incident. The lord's wife reaches out with her own left hand and steadies the platter. "There," she says calmly, "is better saved than spilled." It is a small sentence, but it crosses the table like a warm draught. The steward shuts his mouth. The boy lowers the platter safely. The priest looks down, perhaps hiding a smile, perhaps examining his trencher with spiritual intensity. Some swear afterward that the lady meant nothing by it. Others say she remembered a brother born left-handed, or a child who spilled milk from trying too hard to be right-handed. Even now, it is hard to tell whether mercy arrives by memory, courage, or simple dislike of wasted fish. The meal continues. Ale is poured. Pottage thickens in bowls. The pilgrim tells the Lord of flooded roads and a shrine ribboned with prayers. The wool merchant speaks of cloth prices, always rising when he buys and falling when he sells, which may be the oldest commercial tragedy in Europe. The candle woman presents her beeswax tapers, and the lady accepts them with a nod, admiring their clean honey scent. You notice the candle woman uses her right hand to give the gift, but her left hand supports the bundle underneath. Again, the hidden hand does the quiet work. Near the high table, a young squire cuts meat for an older knight whose fingers are stiff from old wounds. The squire holds the knife in his left. He works neatly, efficiently, without flourish. A man nearby mutters that left-handed knife work looks sly. The old knight hears him. "A dull knife is sly," he says. "A sharp one is honest if the hand knows its task." No one argues with old knights at supper unless they are tired of peace. The dog, who has somehow entered despite all rules known to abbey and keep, lies beneath your bench and receives bits of trencher from the pilgrim. This is not proper. It is also inevitable. The hall grows warmer, faces loosen. The first fear of gesture softens beneath food, ale, and firelight. Still, you see the pattern everywhere: right hand public, left hand watched, right hand trusted, left hand explained. When the salt cellar reaches your end of the table, the wool merchant lifts it carefully, but his sleeve catches a cup. Ale spills across the board. He swears under his breath, then instantly looks toward the priest. The candle woman grabs a cloth with her left hand and dams the flood before it reaches the bread. The pilgrim throws a pinch of salt over his left shoulder so quickly that half of it lands on the dog, who wakes offended and then tastes itself with interest. Laughter moves through the lower table, soft but real. Even the wool merchant laughs once his purse is safe from ale. The fear does not vanish, but it loosens. In the firelight, among trenchers and knives, salt and smoke, you begin to see that order is fragile because life is messy. Fish slides, cups spill, wrists ache, children forget, candles flare, wheels break, and again and again. The left hand reaches out not to curse the world, but to keep it from falling. Late in the evening, as servants clear the tables, the left-handed monk passes behind you carrying his little book. His fingers brush the cover, left hand first, and he does not hide it. Across the hall, the ladies' beeswax tapers are set in iron holders, their flames steady and gold. One leans slightly left in the warm draught, then steadies again. You sit back on the bench, full of bread, smoke, and quiet thought, while outside the keep walls frost gathers over the dark fields. The night waits beyond the torches, but for now the hall hums gently, held together by fire, manners, weary kindness, and all the hands that serve in shadow. The feast thins slowly, not all at once, as if the hall itself is reluctant to give up its warmth. Servants lift trenchers from the tables and carry them toward the door, where scraps will find their way to dogs, pigs, beggars, and any child quick enough to appear useful. The Lord speaks with the priest near the high table. The ladies' beeswax tapers burn steady in their iron holders, their clean honey scent rising above ale, smoke, onions, and wet wool. The dog beneath your bench licks salt from its fur with the offended dignity of an animal who has survived both superstition and seasoning. Outside, frost has sharpened the air. You step from the hall with the pilgrim and the left-handed monk, who has been asked to carry a message back to the abbey before the night grows too late. The priest walks with you as far as the church tower attached to the keep's small chapel, for the bell rope has tangled after evening ringing, and the old bell ringer's hands are stiff with cold. A boy with a lantern leads the way across the yard. Torches hiss in iron brackets. Horses shift in the stable. Somewhere, a kitchen maid laughs softly, then hushes herself as though joy too must observe curfew. The chapel tower rises from the inner wall, square and dark against the stars. It is smaller than the parish tower in town, but up close it feels tall enough, its stone damp, its doorway narrow, its steps worn hollow by years of feet, climbing to call hours over field and hearth. The priest unlocks the oak door with an iron key. It complains when turned, a long scrape in the cold. Inside, the tower smells of stone dust, old rope, bird feathers, and trapped weather. The lantern throws light up a spiral stair so narrow that your shoulder brushes one wall and your cloak catches the other. You climb slowly. The dog tries to enter, considers the stairs, and wisely remains below, where theology is flatter. Each step lifts you away from the warm disorder of the hall and into a colder order of bells, directions, and night. The monk follows behind you, one hand on the wall. You notice it is his left, and this time he does not change. The priest notices too, perhaps, but says nothing. Above, the bell waits in darkness. Halfway up, you pause at a slit window. The fields lie below, silvered with frost. The manor yard glows with torchlight. Beyond the wall, hedges stripe the land into black lines. Farther still, the road disappears toward the forest where red wool trembled on the oak cross and everyone stepped right while turning left. You can just make out the abbey tower under the stars, another dark finger pointing upward, keeping its own time. The priest rests a moment beside you, breathing lightly from the climb. Bells teach a village where it is, he says. You listen. At first there is only wind, then the faint answering bell from the abbey, marking an hour that your body understands as tiredness. In this world, bells are not decoration. They wake workers, call prayers, warn fire, mark death, gather help, announce feasts, and tell scattered fields that the day has a spine. A ploughman may not see the church from a low furrow, but he hears it. A woman kneading bread knows when to cover the dough. A shepherd on the hill counts the notes and turns homeward. Time here is not held on wrists or walls. It is poured through bronze into the weather. At the top of the stair, you enter the bell chamber. The bell hangs from a heavy timber frame, dark and greenish in the lantern light, with a rope dropping through a hole in the floor. Pigeons mutter in the rafters, annoyed by visitors and perhaps by all organised religion. The old bell ringer sits on a stool, rubbing his knuckles with a cloth soaked in some sharp-smelling oil. He has a fur cap pulled low, and his fingers are swollen, bent by years of rope, cold and work. Rope twisted left around the peg, he says, would not answer clean. Some swear that a bell rope coiled leftward can sour the sound, or call the wrong kind of attention from the dark. Others say a rope twists however tired hands leave it, and bells do not care so long as they are pulled. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. But the old ringer still makes the boy unwind and coil it again sunwise, to the right, muttering that habits cost less than trouble. The priest explains softly that much in church life follows direction. The altar faces east, toward dawn and resurrection. The honoured place is at the right hand. Blessing moves in established paths. Processions circle in one way, not another. The painted walls teach even those who cannot read the saved on the right, the lost on the left, the open hand of mercy raised properly, the world sorted into sides because human minds love a map, especially when the night is large. No one can quite agree whether symbols begin as comfort or control. Perhaps they are both, when the world is full of sickness, hunger, failed harvest, childbirth danger, wolves beyond the pasture, and lords who count rent even in bad years. People cling to patterns. Right and left become more than directions. They become ways to place fear where it can be seen. The old ringer lets you touch the rope. It is rough, stiff with use, and cold enough to bite your palm. He shows how the pull must fall straight, how the hand must close, how the body leans and releases. His right hand demonstrates, his left hand steadies. Work again. Always work. The praised hand acts before the eyes. The other makes the action possible. The monk steps forward. May I? The old ringer looks at him, then at the priest. A small pause hangs in the bell chamber, colder than the stone. The priest nods. The monk takes the rope with both hands. His left sits higher, surer. He pulls once, gently. The bell does not fully ring. It only stirs, giving a low bronze murmur that rolls into the tower stones and fades over the fields. No one rebukes him. The old ringer grunts. Good grip, he says. Do not let Brother Anselm hear me. A smile passes through the chamber, quiet as candlelight. The monk lowers his eyes, but not before you see relief there. Below, the keep settles. The hall fires dim. The ladies' tapers burn near the high table. Somewhere in the dark, the boy from the manor court may be asleep with his hands tucked under a blanket. Both of them simply hands in dreams. The relic waits in the parish church. The healer's herbs dry under the rafters. The roadside shrine keeps its ribbons stiff with frost. You stand beside the bell and look out through the open arch. The land spreads in right roads and left bends. Holy walls and muddy yards. Habits and mercies. The church fears the left hand because it fears disorder, because it inherits old signs, because it teaches with images, because people bring their village dread to the altar and carry it home again. Yet the bell's low murmur has passed over every roof without choosing a side. The priest closes the shutter against the wind. The lantern dips. You begin the careful descent, one hand on the wall, one hand holding your cloak, right and left taking turns in the dark. The stair down from the bell chamber is slower than the climb, because darkness gathers more thickly below, and because medieval spiral steps seem designed by someone who mistrusts ankles. You keep one hand against the cold wall, feeling damp stone, old mortar, and the shallow grooves left by generations of palms. The monk descends ahead of you, his lantern low, his shadow turning on the curved wall like a figure painted in smoke. The priest follows behind, silent now, and the bell above you settles into stillness after its soft bronze murmur over the fields. At the tower door, the dog rises from the threshold and shakes itself as if it has personally guarded the entrance from wolves, thieves, and complicated doctrine. The yard outside lies under frost. The keep hall still glows, but dimly. Servants carry the last trenchers away, and a boy tosses rushes over a patch where ale is spilled. Somewhere near the kitchen, someone scrubs a pot with sand and mutters about grease, which is perhaps the truest evening prayer of any household. The priest means to cross back toward the hall, but a small shape waits near the chapel porch. It is the boy from the manor court. His mother stands behind him, cloak drawn tight, face pale in the lantern light. The boy's hair is flattened from sleep or fear, and his hands are hidden in his sleeves. You know him by the stillness, by the way the air round him seems full of all the corrections ever whispered into it. The priest stops, the monk stops too, and though he looks down, you see his left fingers curl around the book at his side. Father, the mother says softly, he cannot sleep. No one can quite agree whether children confess because they fear sin, punishment, dreams, or the sorrow in a parent's voice. The boy says nothing. His mother rests a hand on his shoulder, not pressing, only staying there. The priest nods and opens the chapel door. Inside, the chapel is warmer than the tower but colder than the hall. One beeswax taper burns near the little altar, almost spent. Its flame trembles above a shallow cup of wax, gold at the heart and blue at the root. The painted saints on the wall look softened by smoke and age. A rush mat lies near the step. An iron-bound chest sits beneath a linen cloth. The air smells of wax, stone, and the faint sweetness of the lady's gifted candles waiting to be used on some better morning. This is not the curtained confession box of later ages. Here, the priest sits on a low bench near the side wall, and the boy kneels close enough to speak quietly. His mother waits near the door. You stand farther back with the monk, where shadow and candlelight meet. The dog, unexpectedly respectful, lies down outside the threshold with its nose on its paws. The priest asks the boy what troubles him. The answer comes slowly. At first it is only breath, then a whisper. The boy says that when he touched the relic with his left hand and the candle flared, he felt glad, not holy, not frightened, glad. Glad that for one moment the wrong hand had not been pulled back. Glad that people looked and did not strike. Glad that his left fingers touched silver before his right fingers could obey. He says this as though gladness itself may be sinful if it arrives from the forbidden side. The priest listens. His face is lined with candle shadow. Some swear that confession is meant to scrape the soul clean like a knife scraping mud from a boot. Others say it is more like warming stiff hands over a small fire, slow, imperfect, and easily interrupted by smoke. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. But here, beneath the last taper, you feel less scraping than thawing. Did you mean mockery? The priest asks. The boy shakes his head. Did you mean harm? Again, no. Did you mean to call attention to yourself? A pause. The boy swallows. I meant to touch before I lost courage. The mother turns her face away, and you see one hand rise to her mouth. The monk beside you goes very still. The priest folds his hands. His right thumb rests over his left, then shifts, perhaps by accident, perhaps not. Courage is not always obedience, he says, but neither is every fear wisdom. This is a dangerous sentence, and he speaks it very softly. Outside, the yard quiets. The last voices from the hall fade. A horse stamps in the stable. The world narrows to candle, child, priest, and the hush of cold stone. The boy confesses smaller things then, that he sometimes practices writing with his left hand in spilled ash near the hearth, that he hides the marks before his mother sees, that he once wished his right hand would fall asleep forever so no one could ask him to use it, that he fears the church bell because it reminds him when people are watching. No one laughs, no one corrects his words. The priest gives him a small penance, not harsh, not grand. He tells him to say a prayer for patience with both hands folded together, not right over left, not left hidden beneath right, together. The boy looks uncertain, as if this arrangement might be against some rule kept in a locked book. The priest shows him, joining his own hands palm to palm. The boy copies him. His chapped fingers fit unevenly. They are simply a child's hands, cold from the yard and tired from being made into symbols. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the priest changes his mind that night or only admits a doubt that has lived in him for years. Perhaps the relic candle unsettles him. Perhaps the manor hall weighs on him. Perhaps he remembers the old woman in the nave crossing herself with the only hand that would move. Perhaps mercy, like water, finds cracks in stone given enough time. When the prayer ends, the priest blesses the boy. His right hand rises, as custom requires, and makes the sign in the candlelight. Then he lowers it and, after a brief hesitation, touches the boy's joined hands with both of his own. The mother weeps quietly then, not loudly, not in a way that disturbs the chapel, but with the exhausted relief of someone who has been holding fear in her chest all day and can finally set it down beside the door. The taper shortens, wax spills over its holder and hardens in pale folds. The monk steps forward before anyone leaves. He does not speak to the priest. He does not need to. He only opens his small book and shows the boy a line of writing, neat and dark, made by a left hand that has learned to move carefully over wet ink. The boy looks at it as though looking through a crack into another country. "Lift the wrist," the monk whispers. "Let the ink dry behind you." It is writing advice. It is also something larger. The priest hears and does not forbid it. At last. The candle gutters low. The mother wraps the boy in her cloak and leads him out into the frost. The monk closes his book. The priest remains seated, staring at the taper until the flame bends left, straightens, and sinks into a tiny red bead. Darkness gathers gently around the chapel, not cruelly, only as night gathers everywhere when the last candle gives itself away. You step outside with cold hands, hearing the abbey bell faintly in the distance, and you carry with you the feeling that blame has not vanished, but has softened into doubt, and doubt, in such a world, may be the first warm coal before dawn. Dawn comes pale and careful, not so much arriving as being uncovered layer by layer from beneath the night. You stand outside the little chapel with your cloak drawn close, while frost whitens the yard stones and the last warmth of the feast has faded into memory. The boy and his mother are gone now, swallowed by the dim lane toward the outer gate. The priest remains inside for a time, perhaps praying, perhaps thinking, perhaps simply sitting where no one can ask him to decide anything for a few blessed breaths. The monk stands beside you with his small book held against his chest, his left thumb resting openly on the cover, The dog waits near your boot, patient and serious, as though it has understood the entire matter and found humans unnecessarily dramatic. Beyond the keep wall, the first bell of morning sounds from the abbey. A moment later, another answers from the parish town far behind you, softer with distance. Their notes cross the frosted fields without choosing right road or left bend. You listen as the sound moves over hedges, ditches, roofs, sleeping cattle, and the black lines of ploughed earth. It touches everything equally, even the places people mistrust. You walk with the monk and the priest down from the keep as the sky pales over the east. The road is hard beneath the frost, and each step breaks a thin crust of silver. Smoke begins to rise from cottages. Somewhere a woman lifts a shutter. Somewhere a boy drives pigs from a pen with a stick in his left hand until someone calls from a doorway, and he changes hands without thinking. The old pattern is still alive. One soft mercy in a chapel does not unmake 1,000 mornings. No one can quite agree whether change begins in laws, sermons, miracles, or the quiet refusal to strike a child's hand away. Perhaps, in a place like this, it begins smaller, a priest hesitating before rebuke, a monk showing how to lift the wrist above wet ink, a mother hiding her son's hand not in shame but in protection, a lady steadying a platter before fish becomes doctrine, an old bell ringer admitting a good grip when he sees one. At the churchyard near the town, frost lies on the graves like flour dusted over dark loaves. The gate creaks when you enter. The half-burned candle from the font is gone, but a fresh one burns near the door, its flame low and steady. The relic has been returned to its chest. The painted saints look down through candle smoke and morning grey. On the right side of the wall, the blessed still gather in faded gold. On the left, the lost still tumble in their old red shadows. The pictures have not changed, but you have. You understand now that the fear of the left hand is not one single cruel rule. Simple and sharp as a knife, it is a web. It is scripture remembered through paint. It is old Latin tangled with village sayings. It is table manners, ink smears, oath hands, salt over shoulders, shrine ribbons, healers' knots, market gossip, and the need to place bad luck somewhere outside the heart. It is the church trying to teach order in a world where wheels break, fevers come, candles flare, and children are born with habits no sermon planned. Some swear that the left hand belongs to danger. Others swear it can heal what the right hand cannot reach. Even now, it is hard to tell whether medieval people fear the hand itself or the uncomfortable truth it carries that the world does not always fit the shape authority gives it. The monk kneels near the font. Slowly, he touches the water with his right hand, then rests his left hand beside the stone bowl. Not in defiance, not in display, only in peace. The priest sees him. For one breath, the old correction might return, but it does not. The priest only lowers his eyes. Outside, the dog noses through the churchyard grass and startles a crow from a grave marker. The bird lifts leftward into the pale sky, black wings opening over frost, and no one calls it an omen. It is only a crow. It is only morning. You step back through the churchyard gate as the town begins to wake. The baker rakes coals from ash. The market boards are lifted. The toll-keeper warms his hands under his cloak. The broken cart wheel, repaired at last, leans against a wall waiting for its next grievance. Somewhere, the old beggar gives a blessing with whatever hand rises first. Somewhere, the boy from the manor court wakes and, perhaps before anyone sees, draws letters in hearth ash with his left fingers, lifting his wrist just as the monk taught him. You walk away from the church and the bells follow you softly. The road beyond the wall is no grand road, only mud, frost, hoof marks, and the slow promise of distance. Yet it feels gentler now. The leftward bend near the alder trees waits where it always has. The roadside shrine keeps its ribbons. The abbey bell breathes across the fields. Smoke lifts from roofs in thin blue threads. The world remains cold, uncertain, and full of rules. But somewhere inside it, a small space has opened, and you carry that space with you. You walk beneath the sky paling from grey to pearl, your right hand tucked into your cloak for warmth, your left hand swinging free at your side. It is only a hand, cold, ordinary, human, a hand for holding bread, steadying a cup, lifting a child, writing a line, touching silver, tying a ribbon, resting beside another hand in prayer, a hand that has been given too many stories and yet keeps patiently doing the work of living. The town recedes behind you. Its tower lowers into mist. The last candlelight fades from the church door. The dog trots ahead, pauses, looks back, and then follows the road as if all roads are safe when taken slowly. The morning widens. You breathe in the smell of frost, smoke, wet wool, and distant bread. Nothing hurries. The fields lie quiet. The hedges hold beads of thawing ice. Somewhere far off, a cart begins to roll, its wheel creaking but whole. The bell sounds once more, softer now, and the note seems to rest on the land rather than command it. So you let the old fear loosen behind you. You do not mock the people who carried it. They lived in a world of hard winters, dim rooms, dangerous births, sudden illness, and signs painted on every wall. They reached for order because disorder stood very near. But you also remember the child's hands folded together, the monk's ink drying cleanly, the healer's herbs above the fire, and the lady's calm words over the slipping platter. Better saved than spilled. The road grows lighter, your steps grow slower. The medieval world settles around you like a wool blanket warmed near coals. The churchyard is behind you now, the tower softer in mist, the bells gentler with every breath. You no longer need to follow every superstition to its root. You no longer need to decide whether every candle flare is miracle, draught, or story. Some things can rest. The sky brightens by a shade. A little wind moves over the fields, barely touching the grass. The dog lowers its nose and walks quietly beside you. Your cloak is heavy, your boots are muddy, your hands are warm inside the folds of wool, right and left, praised and doubted, corrected and hidden. Both belong to the same tired body moving toward morning. And now the road becomes very still. The town fades into a hush of stone, smoke, bells, and memory. The fear fades too, not sharply, not all at once, but gently, like breath vanishing in cold air. You're safe here at the edge of waking and dreaming. The candles burn low, the rushes lie quiet, the old doors close softly behind you, the fields open ahead, pale and calm, and the last sound is only the bell, far away, folding itself into the dawn.